The orbital defense station shattered like glass under the plasma barrage. Commander Dylan Harper gripped the pilot controls as his fighter spiraled through the debris field, alarms screaming in every direction. 3 alien warships, Valkyrie dreadnoughts, each the size of a city block, bore down on the civilian evacuation convoy below. All units, this is Harper. We don't have the firepower to stop them. His wingman, Lieutenant Sophie Grant, pulled up beside him. Her fighter was already trailing smoke from the last pass. Then we buy time, she said. Harper watched the lead dreadnought charge its main cannon. The convoy had 400,000 souls aboard. Men, women, children. They needed 2 more minutes to clear the gravity well and jump. 2 minutes they didn't have. Sophie, that's suicide. I know. She dove first. Harper cursed and followed. The Valkyrie had conquered 14 species in the past century. Their ships were unstoppable. Their weapons cut through shields like they weren't there. Every tactical simulation said humanity would lose this war in 6 months. The simulations didn't account for desperation. Harper's fighter shook as he unleashed everything he had. Missiles, railgun rounds, energy bursts. The dreadnought's point defense swatted most of it away, but Sophie's attack from the opposite vector punched through. A small explosion bloomed on the alien hull. Not enough. Not even close. The dreadnought's cannon glowed white-hot, charging complete. It swiveled toward the convoy. Harper screamed into his comm. "Ramming speed, hit the cannon mount." "Copy that, Commander." Sophie's fighter accelerated. So did Harper's. They weren't the only ones. Across the battle space, every human pilot still breathing turned their damaged birds into missiles. 12 fighters. 12 last chances. The Valkyrie fired. Sophie's fighter struck the cannon barrel a split second before the beam released. The explosion was blinding. The beam deflected, tearing through empty space instead of the convoy. Harper's fighter slammed into the cannon's power coupling. Metal screamed. His cockpit cracked. Blood filled his mouth as the G-forces crushed him against his seat, but the coupling ruptured. Energy backfed into the dreadnought's core. The last thing Harper saw before his fighter disintegrated was the alien warship tearing itself apart from the inside. Chain reactions rippled across its hull. Secondary explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. The convoy jumped to hyperspace. The other 2 dreadnoughts retreated, and in the darkness of space among the wreckage and the silence, 12 human pilots became legends. The Valkyrie would later tell their young ones about this battle. They would speak of a species that didn't yield. That chose annihilation over submission. That turned every loss into a wound inflicted on their enemies. They would speak of humans with something close to fear. 6 months later, the Valkyrie High Command gathered in their war cathedral orbiting the conquered world of Thessaron Prime. Admiral Krenthar stood before the holographic display, his forearms folded across his chitinous chest. The human fleet positions glowed red across a dozen star systems. "They should be extinct," he said. "We destroyed their shipyards. We glassed their colonies. We killed billions." His second-in-command, Commander Veshtar, gestured at the display. "Yet their fleet grows stronger. Our intelligence reports they're building ships inside asteroid fields, hollowing out moons, using debris from our own destroyed vessels to forge new weapons." Kernthar's mandibles clicked in frustration. Possible. No species has ever recovered from the devastation we inflicted on Earth. Earth is a graveyard, but humanity wasn't on Earth when we struck. They scattered. Adapted. Veshtar pulled up tactical reports. Worse. They're learning our technology faster than we can deploy countermeasures. Last week, a human frigate disabled one of our carriers using our own jamming frequencies against us. The display shifted to show footage from that engagement. A single human ship, battered and burning, weaving through a Valkyrie battle group. It should have died in seconds. Instead, it launched what looked like escape pods directly at the carrier's bridge. The pods weren't escape pods. They were boarding craft. Kernthar watched as human soldiers cut through the carrier's hull with plasma torches. 30 seconds later, the carrier's weapons turned on its own fleet. By the time Valkyrie security reached the bridge, the humans had uploaded a virus into the ship's core systems and evacuated. The carrier exploded, taking 2 destroyers with it. How many soldiers? Krenthar asked. 8. 8. Krenthar's voice dropped to a hiss. 8 humans crippled a carrier group of 43 ships. Yes, Admiral. Across the galaxy. Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the human warship Defiant. The ship was a patchwork of salvaged parts, human ingenuity and pure desperation welded into something that shouldn't fly but somehow did. Enemy fleet detected, his navigator called out. 16 Velkari cruisers. They're blockading the Arcturus colony. Reed studied the tactical display. Arcturus held 2 million civilians. The colony's shields would last maybe an hour under sustained bombardment. His crew looked at him. They all knew the numbers. 16-1. The Defiant was designed to carry a crew of 200. It currently held 73. And half the ship's systems were held together with spit and prayers. Lieutenant Chen, how many missile tubes are operational? 4, sir. We have 17 missiles total. And our railguns? Portside battery is offline. Starboard is functional but overheating with every third shot. Reed smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who'd already died a dozen times and kept finding reasons to come back. Then we make every shot count. Helm, set course directly into their formation. Maximum burn. His first officer, Commander Lisa Torres, stepped close. Marcus, this is insane even for you. Probably. But those people down there trusted us to protect them. I won't ask anyone to follow me on this run. Anyone who wants to take an escape pod, do it now. No judgment? Nobody moved. Torres grinned. Guess you're stuck with us, Captain. The Defiant accelerated. Alarms wailed as the ship pushed past its safety limits. The hull groaned. Plasma conduits started glowing cherry red. The Velkari fleet detected them and opened fire. Space filled with energy beams and explosive rounds. The Defiant weaved through the onslaught, taking hits that would have destroyed any other ship. Somehow, it kept flying. Entering weapons range, Chen reported. Fire. Everything. The Defiant's missiles streaked through space like falling stars. Each one carried a human engineer's final modifications, adjustments made in the dark hours before battle, when hope was a luxury and innovation was survival. The first 3 missiles detonated against Velkari shields, creating cascading electromagnetic pulses that rippled through the enemy formation. The 4th missile slipped through the disruption and punched into a cruiser's reactor core. The explosion consumed 2 ships and crippled a 3rd. Railguns now! Reed shouted. The starboard battery fired. Superheated tungsten rods tore through the weakened shields of the nearest cruiser. The Velkari ship listed, venting atmosphere and debris, but 15 cruisers remained, and they were closing fast. Brace for impact. Torres grabbed her console as the Defiant shuddered under a direct hit. The port hull buckled. Deck 7 depressurized. 14 crew members died instantly. Reed's jaw tightened. Chen, redirect all power from life support to engines. We're going through them, not around them. Sir, that'll give us maybe 4 minutes of air. Then we better be fast. The Defiant dove into the heart of the Velkari formation. At this range, the alien ships couldn't fire without hitting each other. Reed exploited every gap, every moment of hesitation. His ship wasn't faster or stronger, but it moved like a creature possessed, because it was crewed by people who refused to die quietly. Collision alert! The navigator screamed. A Velkari destroyer loomed ahead, trying to ram them. Reed yanked the controls hard left. The Defiant scraped along the destroyer's hull, metal shrieking against metal. Sparks showered across the view screen. Torres had already anticipated the move. She triggered the emergency explosive charges welded to the Defiant's underbelly. The shaped charges detonated against the destroyer's hull, punching through armor and into critical systems. The destroyer broke apart. 13 cruisers left, but the Defiant was dying. Main power flickered. The engines were on fire. Hull breaches on 6 decks. Oxygen at 30% and dropping. Captain, we need to withdraw, Torres said quietly. Reed looked at the planet below, at the 2 million souls counting on them, at the impossible odds and the certain death waiting if they retreated. He thought about Sophie Grant ramming a dreadnought to save a convoy. About 12 pilots who chose annihilation over surrender. No, he said. We finish this. On the surface of Arcturus, civilian engineer Kyle Morrison watched the battle through a telescope. He saw the Defiant taking hit after hit, saw it burning and broken but still fighting. Around him, 2 million people held their breath. "They're not going to make it," someone whispered. Morrison didn't look away from the telescope. "They don't have to make it. They just have to make the Valkyrie think twice about coming down here." In orbit, the Valkyrie fleet commander was thinking exactly that. He'd lost 4 ships to a single human vessel. His remaining cruisers were damaged, crews shaken. The tactical advantage was still his, but the cost kept rising, and humans didn't surrender. They didn't retreat. They just kept coming, kept fighting, kept making you pay for every inch of space. The fleet commander made his decision. "All ships, withdraw to Rally Point Gamma. We'll return with reinforcements." His officers stared at him. "Commander, we outnumber them 13-1, and how many of those 13 will still be flying when we finally kill that ship? How many of our warriors will die to claim this one colony?" He gestured at the burning human vessel on the display. "Look at it. It should have been destroyed 10 minutes ago. Yet it endures." The Valkyrie fleet began pulling back. On the Defiance bridge, Chen couldn't believe her sensors. "Captain, they're retreating!" Reed slumped in his chair, blood running from a gash on his forehead. Around him, his crew was battered and broken but alive. The ship groaned like a dying animal. "Get emergency crews to the hull breaches. Stabilize life support. And someone get me a damage report that doesn't make me want to cry." Torres moved beside him. "We shouldn't have survived that, Marcus." "I know. They outnumbered us 13-1 and they ran. I know that too." She looked at him with something between awe and terror. "What does that make us?" Reed thought about it. About the Valkyrie's vast empire and overwhelming power. About humanity's shattered fleets and desperate tactics. About the choice between certain death and impossible victory. "It makes us human," he said. "And apparently, that's enough to make gods nervous." Below them, Arcturus erupted in celebration. 2 million voices crying out in relief and gratitude and defiant joy. The Defiant limped toward the colony's repair docks, trailing fire and debris like a comet. And across the galaxy, in 100 Valkyrie strategy rooms, commanders began to understand what their ancestors should have known from the beginning. You don't defeat humanity by destroying their ships. You defeat them by breaking their will. And that, it seemed, was impossible. 3 weeks after Arcturus, the Valkyrie Empire convened an emergency council. Representatives from 15 conquered species filled the grand chamber, all vassals who'd bent the knee rather than face extinction. At the center sat the Valkyrie Empress herself, Shar-Tal, whose reign had seen more worlds fall than any ruler in their history. Until now. "The humans have taken the Orion Junction," an intelligence officer reported. "They used captured Valkyrie stealth technology to slip past our sensor grid. By the time we detected them, they'd already seized the station and turned its defense platforms against our relief fleet." Shar-Thal's primary eyes narrowed. "How many humans?" Initial estimates suggested a battalion. Actual count was 47 soldiers led by a lieutenant named Jackson Pierce. 47. The Empress rose from her throne. 47 humans took a military installation designed to hold against 20,000. They didn't take it through force alone, Empress. They sabotaged our environmental controls, creating the illusion of a catastrophic systems failure. When our garrison evacuated, the humans simply walked in and locked the doors behind them. One of the vassal representatives, a methane-breathing Quillix, spoke up. "Forgive me, Empress, but perhaps we underestimated this species. Their tactical creativity exceeds anything in our databases." "Creativity born of desperation," Shar-Thal said. "They have no resources, no industrial base, no hope of victory through conventional means. So they improvise, they cheat, they die by the thousands and count it victory if they take a single ship with them. And it's working," the Quillix replied carefully. "Our fleets are stretched thin. Our soldiers hesitate before engaging human forces. Morale is declining. Then we remind them why the Valkyrie rule this galaxy." Shar-Thal activated the central hologram. I'm authorizing the deployment of the World Breakers, 3 dreadnoughts equipped with planet-cracking weapons. We will find the largest human settlement and make an example that will echo through history." The chamber fell silent. World Breakers had only been used twice before. Both times, entire civilizations ceased to exist within hours. On the human colony of New Haven, Lieutenant Jackson Pierce stood in the command center of the captured Orion Junction. His team had held it for 18 days against constant Valkyrie attempts to retake it. They'd lost 23 soldiers in the process. "Sir, we're picking up multiple jump signatures," his communications officer, Sergeant Nina Cross, reported. "Big ones. Really big." Pierce pulled up the sensor data and felt his blood turn cold. 3 massive energy signatures, each one dwarfing anything he'd ever seen. The computer struggled to classify them before finally displaying a designation pulled from captured Valkyrie files. Worldbreaker-class dreadnoughts. "Get me a priority channel to High Command, now." Within minutes, he was connected to Admiral Rachel Warren, commander of the 3rd Human Fleet. Her face appeared on screen, already grim. "We see them, Lieutenant. We're scrambling every available ship but Pierce. I won't lie to you. Those things can crack a planet's crust from orbit. If they reach New Haven, how long do we have? 14 hours. Maybe less." Pierce looked at his team. Young faces, tired eyes, people who'd already given everything and somehow found more to give. Behind them, through the viewport, New Haven hung in space like a blue-green jewel. 700,000 colonists, families, children, dreams of a future that might die in 14 hours. "What are our options, Admiral?" Warren hesitated. "The World Breakers have one vulnerability. Their planet-cracking weapons require a synchronization period. All 3 ships need to maintain perfect formation and charging sequence for approximately 4 minutes before firing. If we can disrupt that sequence, then we stop them. Lieutenant, we'd need to break through their escort fleet, penetrate their point defense grid, and strike all 3 dreadnoughts simultaneously. With our current forces, the probability of success is less than 2%. Pierce smiled grimly. "Admiral, with respect, 2% is generous odds for humans these days." Warren almost laughed. "Almost. I'm sending you everything we have in range. It won't be enough, but it's something. It'll have to be." The channel closed. Pierce turned to his team. "Cross, broadcast a message to every human ship, station, and outpost within jump range. Tell them what's coming. Tell them New Haven needs them." "Sir, most of those ships are civilian. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, colony transports. They're not warships. They're human. That's enough." For the next 12 hours, ships began arriving. The 3rd Fleet's remnants, battered but operational. A destroyer held together with emergency welds. 2 frigates that should have been decommissioned years ago. And then the civilian ships started coming. Ore haulers with mining lasers. Colony ships with improvised missile racks. Even a transport filled with construction workers who'd welded armor plating to the hull and loaded the cargo bay with explosive charges. By the time the World Breakers arrived, humanity had assembled the strangest fleet in military history. 73 ships of wildly different sizes and capabilities, crewed by veterans and civilians, soldiers and miners, people who'd never fired a shot in anger, and people who couldn't remember peace. Admiral Warren stood on the bridge of her flagship, the heavy cruiser Relentless. She looked at the impossible fleet arrayed before her, and felt something she hadn't felt since Earth burned. Pride. "All ships, this is Warren. We're outgunned, outmatched, and probably outthinking our survival instincts right now. But they came to break our world, to erase us from existence, to make us another cautionary tale in their empire's history." She paused, letting her words sink in. "So let's give them a story they'll never forget. All ships, attack formation. We're going right down their throats." The human fleet accelerated toward the World Breakers, and the heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath. The Valkyrie escort fleet moved to intercept. 200 warships forming a wall of steel and fire between the humans and the World Breakers. Energy weapons charged. Missile batteries armed. Every tactical calculation said the human fleet would be annihilated before getting within strike range. The calculations were correct. The humans attacked anyway. All civilian vessels execute scatter pattern Delta, Warren commanded. Military ships, follow my lead. We're punching a hole through their center. The fleet split. Civilian ships broke formation, spreading wide across the battlefield. The Velkari fleet commanders struggled to track 73 targets moving in seemingly random directions. Their point defense systems tried to prioritize threats. That was the mistake. Because humans had learned something the Velkari hadn't considered. When every ship was willing to die, every ship became a priority target. A mining hauler called the Dusty Girl accelerated directly at a Velkari battlecruiser. The battlecruiser's weapons opened fire, tearing through the hauler's minimal armor. But the Dusty Girl's captain, a grizzled miner named Frank Burton, had already locked his controls and evacuated his skeleton crew to escape pods. The hauler's mining laser, designed to cut through asteroids, fired at point-blank range directly into the battlecruiser's shield generator. The shields collapsed. 3 human missiles from a distant frigate struck the exposed hull a heartbeat later. The battlecruiser went dark. This pattern repeated across the battle space. Civilian ships drawing fire, creating openings, dying so military vessels could strike. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was utterly insane. And it was working. Warren's flagship led the military spearhead through the gap. Railgun fire tore through Velkari formations. The destroyer Vengeful, its hull covered in burn scars from a dozen previous battles, rammed a Velkari cruiser at full speed. Both ships exploded in a flash of white light, but the path was opening. On the bridge of the lead Worldbreaker, Commander Thelkarn watched the tactical display with growing disbelief. His escort fleet was being systematically dismantled by an inferior force. Impossible. The numbers didn't support this outcome. "Begin charging sequence," he ordered. We destroyed New Haven now. The 3 Worldbreakers moved into formation. Deep in their cores, weapons capable of shattering continents began to wake. The synchronization process started. 4 minutes until fire. Lieutenant Pierce watched from the Orion Junction. His stolen sensor data showed him everything. The charging signatures, the formation alignment, the ticking clock. "Cross, are the Junction's defense platforms still operational?" "Yes, sir, but their range won't reach the Worldbreakers from here." "It will if we move the Junction." Cross stared at him. "Sir, this station isn't designed for mobility. It's anchored to... I know what it's anchored to. I also know we installed emergency thrusters for orbital adjustment. What's the maximum burn we can get?" She ran calculations. "If we overload every thruster simultaneously and cut all safety protocols, we might achieve 0.03 acceleration for approximately 90 seconds before the structure tears itself apart." "Do it. Aim us directly at those Worldbreakers, Lieutenant. We'll never reach them in time. And even if we did, the station's weapons can't penetrate dreadnought armor." Pierce smiled coldly. "Who said anything about shooting them?" Realization dawned on Cross's face. "You're gonna ram a space station into a Worldbreaker, into 3 Worldbreakers if our trajectory is right. Now get everyone to escape pods. You have 5 minutes. Sir, someone needs to stay and pilot. That's me." "Now move, Sergeant. That's an order." Cross wanted to argue, but she saw the look in Pierce's eyes and knew nothing would change his mind. She saluted and ran. 4 minutes until the Worldbreakers fired. Pierce began the sequence. Explosives severed the station's anchor points. Emergency thrusters roared to life. The entire structure shuddered as forces it was never designed to handle tore through support beams and hull plating. The Orion Junction, a station that had stood guard over this sector for 30 years, began to move. 3 minutes. Admiral Warren's fleet had been reduced to 40 ships. The Relentless had lost main power and was running on backup systems. But they'd fought through the escort fleet. The path to the Worldbreakers lay open. All ships, maximum acceleration. Target those charging cores. We need to break their synchronization. The remaining human vessels surged forward. Missiles launched. Energy weapons fired. Everything they had, thrown at the 3 massive dreadnoughts. The Worldbreakers' point defense swatted most of it away. A few hits penetrated, causing minor damage. Not enough. Not nearly enough. 2 minutes. The lead World Breakers commander noticed the station, a curious sensor signature, moving at impossible speed for something that size. He dismissed it. A dying space station couldn't threaten a World Breaker. Pierce fought the controls as the junction accelerated. Hull sections were tearing away. Decks were collapsing. The station was literally falling apart around him, but the trajectory held. He thought about Sophie Grant diving into that dreadnought 6 months ago, about Commander Harper choosing annihilation over surrender, about every human who'd looked at impossible odds and decided those odds needed adjustment. For humanity, he whispered. 1 minute. The World Breakers reached critical synchronization. Their weapons glowed with enough power to crack a planet's mantle. Targeting solutions locked on New Haven. Warren watched her tactical display. They'd failed. Even throwing everything they had, they couldn't break the dreadnought's formation. In 60 seconds, 700,000 people would die. Unless... She looked at the Relentless's reactor status. Still operational. Still capable of overload. All hands! Abandon ship! You have 30 seconds! Her crew knew better than to argue with that tone. They ran. Warren set the reactor to critical overload and aimed the Relentless directly at the center World Breaker. She locked the controls and moved to the escape pod. Then she stopped. Someone needed to make course corrections to ensure the ship stayed on target during its final seconds. She returned to the command chair. 30 seconds. Pierce's station struck first. The Orion Junction, moving at a speed that turned it into a kinetic projectile, slammed into the starboard World Breaker. The impact was cataclysmic. The station disintegrated instantly, but its mass and velocity punched through the dreadnought's shields like they were tissue paper. The World Breaker's hull buckled, its charging sequence disrupted. 20 seconds. Warren's flagship hit next. The reactor detonated on impact, a miniature star blooming against the center World Breaker's hull. The explosion consumed the forward third of the dreadnought. Synchronization broken. 10 seconds. But the third World Breaker's weapon had finished charging. Even without synchronization, it could still devastate New Haven's surface. Commander Thelkarn prepared to fire. A construction transport appeared from nowhere, its hull covered in welded armor plates and filled with mining explosives. Its captain, a former construction foreman named Luis Ramirez, had been flying toward the battle for the last hour, knowing he'd arrived too late. He arrived exactly on time. The transport detonated against the third World Breaker's primary weapon housing. The mining explosives, crude but powerful, created a chain reaction that fed back into the charging core. The World Breaker tore itself apart from the inside. 0 seconds. In the silence that followed, 40 human ships floated among the wreckage of 3 World Breakers and 200 escort vessels. New Haven remained intact below them. The cost had been 33 ships, thousands of lives. But 700,000 souls still breathed. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 3 World Breakers destroyed. The Velkari's most feared weapons reduced to debris by a ragtag human fleet that shouldn't have lasted 10 minutes. In the vassal species' territories, whispers began. Quiet conversations in dark corners, questions that hadn't been asked in generations. If humans could do this, what did that mean for the rest of them? Empress Sharathal stood alone in her private chamber, watching tactical projections. The mathematics were undeniable. Humanity had no home world, no industrial centers, no unified command structure. They operated from asteroid bases and salvaged ships. They were scattered, desperate, outnumbered 1,000 to 1, and they were winning. Not through superior technology, not through overwhelming force. They won because they simply refused to accept defeat. Every loss became a lesson. Every death became inspiration. Every impossible situation became an opportunity to prove the universe wrong. Her intelligence chief entered without announcement. Empress, we've intercepted human communications. They're calling what happened in New Haven the Battle of Defiance. It's already becoming a rallying cry. Of course it is. Sharathal turned from the display. What are our losses this month? 17 colonies liberated by human forces or vassal uprisings inspired by human tactics. 23 warships destroyed. 4 supply lines severed. And we're receiving reports that some vassal species are refusing conscription orders. Rebellion? Not yet. But the groundwork is there. The humans showed them something we've spent centuries making them forget. That resistance is possible. Sharathal was silent for a long moment. Her empire had stood for 800 years. She'd crushed rebellions before they could form, eliminated threats before they could organize. But humans were different. They didn't organize. They didn't follow predictable patterns. They just kept coming, kept adapting, kept finding ways to turn weakness into strength. Contact the human leadership. Arrange a meeting. The intelligence chief's mandibles clicked in shock. Empress, we don't negotiate with inferior species, but I'm beginning to question whether humans qualify as inferior. She looked at the projection of New Haven, still intact despite everything thrown at it. A species that can do this isn't defeated by firepower. They're only defeated by extermination, and every attempt to exterminate them costs us more than we can sustain. 2 weeks later, Admiral Warren stood in a neutral space station alongside what remained of humanity's military command. Across the negotiating table sat Empress Sharathal herself, flanked by Valkyrie military commanders who looked at the humans with something between hatred and grudging respect. You've proven resilient, Sharathal began, more than any species we've encountered, but you cannot win this war. Our empire spans 300 systems. Our population numbers in the trillions. Your entire species could fit in one of our minor cities. Warren leaned back in her chair. You're right. We can't win. Not conventionally. But here's what we can do. We can make every system you hold cost you blood. We can inspire every vassal species to question why they bow to you. We can turn every battle into a lesson in why ruling through fear eventually fails. You would accept mutual destruction rather than surrender? We already lost Earth. We're living in mutual destruction. The difference is, we've learned to thrive in it. One of the Valkyrie commanders slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. We should crush the mad. We tried, Sharathal interrupted. 3 world breakers, 200 escort ships. They're debris now. She turned back to Warren. What do humans want? Freedom. Territory. The right to exist without someone's boot on our neck. And reparations for Earth. Impossible. The Valkyrie Empire does not pay. Then we keep fighting. Warren stood. We'll hit your supply lines, free your vassals, turned every engagement into a funeral. And when your empire finally collapses under its own weight, we'll be there to pick through the ruins. The room fell silent. Sharathal studied the human admiral, studied the scars on her face, the fire in her eyes, the absolute conviction in her voice. This was a leader who'd already sacrificed everything, who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for, the most dangerous kind of enemy. A ceasefire, the Empress said finally. 10 systems ceded to human control, reparations paid. Over 50 years. In exchange, you cease military operations and allow our empire to stabilize, Warren considered. 10 systems wasn't freedom, but it was a start, a foundation to build on. 15 systems, reparations paid over 30 years, and you release all vassal species who wish to leave your empire. That would tear apart our Psi. Your empire is already tearing apart. We're just accelerating the process. Take the deal or take the consequences. The negotiation lasted 6 hours. In the end, humanity gained 14 systems, 35 years of reparations, and a mutual non-aggression treaty. The vassal species question remained unresolved, but cracks had formed in the Empire's foundation. As Warren left the station, her aide asked, "Do you think they'll honor the treaty?" But neither will we. Not completely. This isn't peace. It's a pause. Time for both sides to regroup and prepare for the next round. Then why agree to it? Warren smiled. Because we just turned survival into legitimacy. The Valkyrie Empire acknowledged us as equals. Every species in the galaxy just watched a ragtag fleet of desperate humans force the largest empire in known space to the negotiating table. She looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness filled with potential allies and future challenges. We lost Earth. We lost billions. But we proved something the universe needed to see. That power doesn't just come from numbers or technology. or overwhelming force. It comes from the refusal to quit, from the willingness to turn every setback into a setup for the next fight, from looking at impossible odds and deciding those odds are negotiable. On New Haven, celebrations filled the streets. 700,000 voices raised in joy and defiance and hope. On distant worlds, vassal species watched and whispered and began to dream. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages, a new phrase entered common usage. When faced with impossible challenges, when the odds seemed insurmountable, when surrender appeared inevitable, people would say, "Remember what the humans did." Because humanity had shown the heavens something they'd forgotten, that mortals who refuse to kneel are more terrifying than gods who demand worship, that a species willing to die for freedom is impossible to conquer, that the universe doesn't care about your limits unless you decide those limits matter, and that sometimes the greatest power in existence is simply the courage to say no to those who claim to be invincible. The war wasn't over. It would never truly be over. But humanity had earned something precious. Not safety, not peace, but the right to fight for their future on their own terms. And in the end, that was all they'd ever want.